Okay, so this is a review for our first quiz. The first quiz will be coming Thursday, March 27th. And where you can look at these movies and the homeworks, you have a bit more time to do this. I give you the whole day for watching the movies. For the quizzes, we're going to restrict ourselves to the original time slots of our course. So that means I will post the quiz at this time at 4 p.m. So go to my home webpage and look for the quiz. Then it will be posted there. If you don't see it, refresh your browser, because sometimes browsers just go from cache and then you won't see it. So that's the start of the time, and then you have until the end of class to complete the question. Of course, you can do it earlier as you want. That means that you have to email me this. Remember, to 580 in the subject, right? Don't forget to do this by the end of the class. If you send this later to me, then I'm not gonna recognize it, unless you have a very, very good reason that you can say, okay, this has happened or something like that. But please let me know if there's a problem with this due date. But this is what you should normally be doing, and from now on, that's always how the quizzes will be. And I'm thinking most quizzes will probably be on a Thursday. Okay, so the next thing that I have to say, very important, of course, is remember you all signed a pledge of honor that you will, in this quiz, you will only work by yourself, and you will not use any online programs to solve this problem or ask online help from anybody else. But contrast to what from the previous test, you are allowed to use your notes, all the videos that I posted. You can look at this review again. That is allowed. Go back to your homework problems, look at that. So all that is allowed. So this is open book, but nobody else can help you. This is what you pledge to do, and you have to live up to your word. All right. This means also that I'm not interested really in the answer. In fact, perhaps I even will tell you what the answer is. What I want to see is the process of getting to this answer. And that's where you can get your points, not from the answer. Okay? So if you try to cheat by asking a computer program to do this for you, it won't give you credit. You have to show me all the steps, and if the steps don't make sense and yet all of a sudden there's the right answer, this is an indication for me that you were doing something dishonorable. And as I said, you have sworn this now that you will not do this, so it's important. And if I find out that you somehow violated this agreement, then I might fail you. Okay, please take this serious. Okay, so let's go to the actual review. So what I want to do, what the question will be, there's only one question, so you have plenty of time to solve it during this hour and 15 minutes. But I would suggest that you prepare yourself for it. Don't start looking at the review at 4 p.m. Start working, prepare yourself beforehand that you're ready to attack the problem. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a matrix. So here's the matrix that I chose. 3, 0, 4, 1, minus 1, 1, 2, 0, 3. And the question is simple, what is the inverse? And the method that we're using is the method of row reduction. So I'll remind you how this works. We put the matrix, and then next to it, we copy the identity matrix, which we then also will change as we do row operations on the original one. Okay, so that's how it goes. So as I said, all immediate steps are important. Therefore, I have to see each time you have to tell me what row operation you're doing. Don't start writing numbers just like that, because then I don't know what you're doing. Okay, now what is the goal? The goal is to make this guy into the identity matrix. And then this will then be our inverse, right? Okay, so let's start doing that. Now, to get this into the identity matrix, what we do is actually find this echelon form, because that's really what that is. And the echelon form we do with row operations. Now, unfortunately, I've seen some people on the exam, I've not graded all the exams yet, but that don't seem to know how to do row operations. And this is very important, because if today's lesson you see we do row operations, and next time we do row operations, this whole course is basically using row operations. So make sure that you understand what it is. So if you have problems with that, please go review those things before you even start with this one. How does row operations work? What is an echelon form? How do you get it? Okay, so let's start. Remember that in this process, there are two steps. One is to get the echelon form, means we're going to get ones on the diagonal. And the next step is to make it actually into a reduced echelon form. Let's break it down. Okay. We need a 1 into this top corner here. This is where we need a 1, but it's a 3. What you could do, of course, divide everything by 3, but you don't want fractions. You try to avoid fractions as much as possible, although that's not always possible, or hard at least, to not do that. So, okay. Instead, what it's better is to use this one, but it has to be in this position, so we're going to have to exchange these two rows here. So the row operation, the first row operation that I'm doing is row 1, switch that with row 3. That's the notation that we use for that. Okay, so the result would be, just copy everything, would be 1 minus 1, 1, 0, 1, 0. When I say the whole row, of course, I mean this whole row, right? Not just the first 3 elements. Then we switch it with the other, this guy, that comes 3, 0, 4, 1, 0, 0, and we don't do anything with the last one, 2, 0, 3, 0, 0, 1. Okay, so now we have our 1, and with this 1 we can make zeros here and there. And the way that you use these ones is always the same. These so-called pivots, right? This is called, we call this a pivot, just to keep the terminology. What we do is we subtract the right amount from this row to get a 0 there. And what's the right amount? Well, we have to subtract 3 times row 1. So let me write that down. Row 2, I will replace that with row 2 replaced, where we subtract 3 times row 1. Because if I subtract 3 times row 1, then I will subtract from this 3 times this one, that will give me a 0. And the same for the second element, for the element here in the third row. So row 3, I'm going to replace that by row 3 minus 2 times row 1. Okay. So first decide what your row operations are, and then be very, very careful in calculating them. There's a lot of minus signs involved, so that's where things can go wrong. And if you make a little mistake, problems can get really bigger. You get ugly numbers and so on. And normally, the ones that I give you should always have rather nice numbers. But as I said, but not always I can avoid fractions. Don't. Okay, so let's work out what we have. So we didn't do anything with the first row, so we just copy that. Then we added we subtracted 3 times row 1 from row 2. So that means we multiply this with negative 3 and add. So negative 3 times this. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. That's a 0, of course. Then negative 3 times negative 1, that is 3. Added here to the 0, that's 3. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3 plus this 4, that gives me 1. Negative 3 times 0 plus 1. Negative 3 times 1 plus 0, and then negative 3 times 0, 0, that's just 0. Okay, we do the same with the third row. Now we multiply this with negative 2. This times negative 2 minus plus that is 0. Negative 2 times negative 1 plus 0, that's 2. Negative 2 times 1 plus 3, that's 1. Negative 2 times 0 plus 0 is 0. Negative 2 times 1 plus 0 is negative 2. Negative 2 times 0 plus 1 is 1. Okay? Alright. And we have a 1 here now, and we have zeros below this. So this is really what we wanted. So we move to the next one. That's our pivot, but unfortunately it's not 1. So now we have two options. I'm going to start showing you the brute force, the simplest way, but it introduces fractions. So I'm going to I'm going to divide this by 3. so that this becomes a 1. So let's write it down as a row operation. So I'm going to replace row 2 by 1/3 of row 2. Okay, let's do that. It's a bit of fraction, but you'll see it's not so bad. Nothing happens to the first one. Oh, sorry, I forgot the one here. Let me do this a bit more carefully that I don't. Okay. 1 minus 1, 1, 0, 1, 0. Then I divide everything by 3, 1. So here we get a fraction, 1/3. This one also. Okay, this is a minus 1 and a 0. And then nothing happens here. There's no need to make this into a 1, because since we have now a pivot 1 here, it's very easy to make this 0. And the row operation is, again, you know, you can always pause this video and then figure it out for yourself, right? So the row operation is row 3, replace that by row 3. We subtract this guy twice, so minus 2 times row 2. Okay, work that out. We have done nothing with our top row. We didn't do anything with this guy either. And then finally we subtracted minus 2 times, so minus, sorry. So we multiply with minus 2, okay? And then add. I prefer multiplying a negative and adding than subtracting. It works better in my mind. Perhaps your might work differently. So do whatever you feel best. But be careful with the negative signs. So we subtract, so minus 2 plus 2, that's 0. Minus 2, that's minus 2/3 plus 1, that is 1, minus 1, no, 1/3, sorry, 1/3. Right? Okay, so I repeat, this is minus 2/3, minus 2 times that, plus 1, right? Okay. Oops. We keep doing this, so times this is minus 2/3 plus 0, of course. Now here we have multiply with negative 2, that's positive 2 minus 2, or that actually comes 0. And then we have this 1 here, because we're going to multiply this with 0, so nothing happens. Okay, great. So we do have now 2 pivots, so we move to the next row, which is almost a pivot, it's not 1. So how do you make this now 1? Well, okay, you multiply it now with 2, right? So the row operation to do is row 3, replace that with 3 times row 3. This doesn't always have to be divided, right? So, okay, so you get 1 minus 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1/3, 1/3 minus 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. So everything is multiplied by 3, so this is minus 2, this is 0, and this is 3. Great. This is our echelon form. I repeat, why is this? Because we have 1s here, and below it is this staircase of zeros. Echelon means stairs. Okay, fine. So let me make it a little bit clearer back. All right. So phase 2. So in phase 2 of this of our operation, we're gonna make zeros, but now we're going from the lowest rows to the highest rows. Okay. Phase 1, this was phase 1, where we went from the higher rows and took care of the lower rows. All right, so how do we do this? We use this one to make zeros here and there, right? And we do this also always by subtracting or adding, wherever you think of it, this row to the pertinent rows. Okay, so let's, in this particular case, let's see what this be. To get 0 here, I have to do row 2 will be replaced by row 2 minus 1/3 row 1, row 3, right? If I multiply this with minus 1/3 and add it to there, and add it to this thing, I will get 0. Okay, let's get rid of this. Okay, but I also need a 0 here, so let's do this. That's much simpler. That is just from row 1 subtract row 3. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so let's start with this, the top row, right? So we're doing this -1 here, and then add it to the first row. Okay. Nothing happens, of course, in the first two positions because we have zeros there. So only the first thing that happens is here, and we get, so this 1 and -1 are not changed, but this one now becomes, of course, a 0. That's the whole point. We multiply with -1, right? -1, and add it there, so that, and add it to this, that will be 2. And adding 0 to -1, that doesn't do anything, so we just have the 1, adding multiplying with -1 and adding it is -3. Okay. Second row, again, and this time we multiply with -1/3. Nothing, of course, happens in the first two positions, so we just copy 0 and 1. Here, by choice, this makes it 0. And so we only have to look what happens here. So we multiply this number with -1/3, that's 2/3, and add it to this number. 1/3 plus 2/3 is 1. So I repeat, this is 1/3 plus 2 minus 2 times -1/3. That's where this comes from, right? Okay. So okay, sorry, 1. Okay, then there's a 0 here, so it doesn't do anything. We copy. Now we have multiplied this with -1/3 and added it here. Okay, that means that in total we get a -1 here. Look, my fractions are gone. 0, 0, 1, -2, 0, 3. Because I didn't do anything with row 3. So this row is now, this column is now perfect. Now the only thing we need is to use this pivot to make that 0, and that's very simple. I hope everybody sees this now. We do, R1 replaced by R1 plus R2. We just have to add. Okay, so this then will give me finally, nothing happens with the 0, so we have to copy that one. We chose to make this 0, the choice makes it 0, okay. These zeros now don't do anything anymore. This is the reason that we work backwards, that we don't screw up anything that we've done already. And now we have to just make sure that we do this, the last part here, right here. So we gonna add this row to that. So that's a 3, 0, -4. And everything else is just copied. And so, as I said, what you find now is the inverse matrix, and this is what I have to see. I have to see all your row operations, so please indicate them, because if you don't indicate them, I'm assuming you don't know what you're doing. Okay, you have the time, an hour and 50 minutes, to write this down carefully. You see, it's not hard. There's a couple of fractions that came in, and in fact this could have been avoided, right? So how do you avoid this? Let me go with, where did I divide here? This was the stage at which I introduced fractions, right? Okay, let me show you how you can do it without. But it's a little bit, how to say, it's a little trick. It's a bit smart, being smart, but it's a little bit of a trick. Okay, so I'm gonna erase everything after here and show you how this can be done more quickly. I'll keep the answer there, but I'll erase a little bit. I think I might even need less space, so let's see. If I need more, I'll erase more here. Now let me erase everything up till the last answer. Okay. The key is to make this into a 1, but using the 2. Oh, I should say it better. Let me rephrase this. Okay, let me rephrase this. The key is to make this a 1, right? And how do you make this a 1? Is by a right combination of these two here. You don't want, this is now very important, and why I don't like to explain it too much, because people get confused. We cannot use this row. Do not use. Because if we use that row to make a 1 here, we're gonna screw up the 0 here, because there's something is gonna come down from that. So that's why we cannot use that row. We can only use the rows that we have already zeros in. But luckily it's actually very easy here. I hope everyone sees it. What I should do is replace row 2 by row 2 minus row 3. And 2 minus 3, that will give me a 1. Okay, so what does this do? What does this give me? I get 1 minus 1, 1, 0, 1, 0. As I said, we cannot work with this one. I subtracted the row 3 from that, so that zeros don't do anything. 2 minus 3 is 1, 1 minus 1 is 0, 1 minus 0 is 1, minus 3 minus 2, that is minus 1, and 0 minus 1 is minus 1. And then I have 0. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake, right? I wrote a 3 here and that was actually a 1. Right, that was the whole point. I don't know, I said something but I did it the other way. Alright, so now this we just copy, 1, 0, minus 2, 1. So now we have this 1 that we wanted, and now it's going to be much easier. Okay, I'm going to go a bit quicker now, because this is, so row 3, I have to replace now row 3 by twice row 2, because it's going to give me the required 0, so nothing happens with these two guys. The first two rows don't change. Okay, so here I am multiplying this negative 2 and add, so that's a 0 there, that's a 1, minus 2 plus 0, that's minus 2, minus 1, minus 2, that's 0, minus 2, that's a 2 plus 1 is 3. That's what I find. Okay, we have our pivots, see, no fractions needed, we actually already have a 0 here too, so we start our phase 2, right? So our phase 2, remember, starts now going upwards, but we only need to make this one 1. Okay, so this is done by the following row operation. This should be clear, right? It's row 1, replace that with row 1 minus row 3. Okay, so it's this row that will change, nothing in the first two positions because these are just zeros. But here, of course, this becomes a 0. Now, remember, we multiplied this with negative 1 and added it to that, so to the first row, so minus 1, that's a 2, there's nothing there, and then minus 3. That's the new row, 0, 1, 0, 1, minus 1, minus 1, 0, 0, 1, minus 2, 0, 3. We're almost there. We need to take care of this one, and that is done by the row operation. Row 1, replace that with row 1 plus row 2. Okay, so we do that, we add this to that, so we get 1, 0, 0, 3, 0, minus 4. And then the others just stay as they were. So somehow this came out to be quicker. I'm not saying that it always works quicker, but at least I didn't have fractions and I do get the same answer. Okay, that's it. That's for our quiz. It's only one problem, a matrix like this, 3 by 3. I keep it simple, all right?